psych myself out way too much for these videos. Hi, Bernard here. You can't be whatever you want to be. Some people might say that's the worst thing that you could say to a kid. And I would say, well, it depends on the kid. I disagree. I think it's probably one of the best things that you could say to somebody. Let me explain. Now, if you're like me, growing up in the Western society right now, when you're in school, like say all the way as far back as elementary school, you're told that if you're not good at a certain subject, you need to spend more time in it to improve your grades in it, even though some of these things might not be related at all. And someone might try to justify that it is, but they aren't. Reading and math are two very different things. They're two different subjects. They use different parts of the brain. They're quite different. And for people to go and say that if you're bad at reading, then you better focus more on reading and less on math, which is your strength, well, I think it's a little bit ridiculous. Then there's also the people who are bad at school in general. And I can speak from a point of being a man. There's a lot of boys in school who just don't get it. They don't like school. It means nothing to them. I had a friend when I was a junior in high school. I think he showed up like 30 days out of like the 180 that you needed to be in school. What ended up happening was that he needed like the principal to go sign a paper to submit to the state of Illinois. And then he ended up just getting his GED, dropping out, and then going into the military, where he spent 7 years in Afghanistan and Iraq. Now he's back, and he's been handling government contracts, defense contracts, and he's much more successful than I am, despite his shattered educational record, and despite my pristine educational record. It doesn't matter, because at the age of 26, when I finally finished school, he was out in Afghanistan. He could kill people with his bare hands, and, well, I had a degree. I had 2 degrees. Perfect. But there's one thing that gets hammered into just people in general, and just the regular person who gets through the educational system, is that in high school or middle school or elementary school that, you know, you're bad at math, we need to focus on math, even though you might not care about math, even though you might in your daily life as an adult not do anything more than simple addition and subtraction, maybe the occasional multiplication sometimes, or reading the numbers on the Weather Channel so that you know how many degrees it's going to be that day, or what the percent chance of rain is. You know what a percent is, right? But does it really matter? When I was in high school, and my junior year again, this was early 2000s, I was in AP English 3. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the American educational system as it is today, AP is Advanced Placement, which means that you can take a course, and throughout the entire year, they prep you for this test that you take at the end of the year. And if you get a passing score on that test, then when you go to college, you can submit that for semester credits. So for me, AP English 3 was English literature, and I hated that class because it was the summer to my junior year, which was the first year that my dad was retired. So he sat at home all day and picked on me for not reading the summer reading book, which was Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, considered an English classic that was written in the Victorian era of England. And, you know, I hated the book. I was looking through it. The names were confusing. It didn't have any meaning to me at all. But yet I had a teacher who at the time was well beyond the times. She was a vegan feminist. She was like straight out of Tumblr, except early 2000s. There was no such thing as veganism as it is today. Yes, there were vegans, but nobody knew what the hell that was. And she wanted us to write a feminist criticism about the book Wuthering Heights. Now, me, as a 16-year-old growing up in the sheltered suburbs of Chicago, I had no idea what the hell that she wanted. So I wrote some paper, and she gave me an F. And she hand-wrote a note to my parents to say that Bernard failed this paper, and that he needs to redo it, and that if there's any potential guidance that he can get at home, I can provide him, I being Miss Tilson, I can provide him some guidance, but maybe he could use some help from home. Now, my parents had no idea what feminism was. They just looked at it and they said, oh, we got a note home from Bernard's English teacher. Bernard is bad at English. Bernard's bad at reading. Bernard, you're a failure. Simple as that. And that was how they classified me. They just said, oh, well, if you're bad at reading, you're going to be bad at everything else for the rest of your life? How are you going to communicate with people if you can't write? And, I can write just fine. I just can't write a feminist criticism of a book that I really didn't care about or understand at all. So you know what my parents did? They specialized in some course for me to have over the summer so that I could improve my English, because I also took the ACT, which, if you're unfamiliar, is a college entrance exam over in the Midwestern United States. And in the English or reading comprehension portion, I scored significantly lower than I did in the math and science, which I got perfect scores on. I ended up getting like a 33 out of 36, which is a pretty good score, but the substantially low reading comprehension was so concerning to my parents that they had me take the entire test 2 more times, which I didn't do any better the next 2 times. And then they had me take some course, and I thought, well, this is ridiculous. I'm going to be in engineering in college. Engineering, we don't care about English, which, by the way, I didn't do so hot in the undergrad English class either, because we had another teacher who wanted more feminist criticisms of Moby Dick was the next book that I had to read. And yeah, I didn't do so hot on that paper either. Does that make me a bad engineer? No, actually, it made me a great engineer, because I had the perfect grades for all of my engineering courses because I was great at math and science. Those were my strengths. Now, if I focused more on my weaknesses, what would have come out of it? Do I do feminist criticisms of books for my daily life? No, I wouldn't have done it in medicine. I wouldn't have done it in engineering. It had nothing to do with anything in my life. And had I focused time on that, I wouldn't have gotten anything done. So that's how it relates to me. And if we want to go more generally, maybe some people just aren't good at school. Like I had mentioned, my friend who attended 30 out of 180 days, he didn't care about school, and now he's doing better than most people who went to that school. One thing that he was really good at was actually physical work. And when he was engaged in the Marines, he was doing that physical work. Now, at his actual job, he does physical work. He knows how things are occurring. He knows what really goes on in the field. And because of that, he applies that knowledge to a business that becomes very successful. It doesn't matter he only got a GED. It doesn't matter that he got the very bare minimum associate's degree after he came out of the Marines. He focused on his strengths. And with that, he's now able to provide more value to other people than anybody would have imagined when he was in high school. Now, the perception that you must always fix what you're not good at pervades into a lot of different things. In powerlifting, we often say that you're only as strong as your weakest link. So if you're bad at the bench press in locking out, you might want to try to increase your tricep strength in order to address that for the particular lift. If you're falling forward in the squat, you might want to have more abdominal work, more lower back work, so that you don't fall forward, so that you can keep upright better. These are all the things that we talk about in that sport. But when we look at it centrally, you're doing the things that you're bad at in order to increase the strength for one particular lift. You're not looking to do hip flexor movement to get better at hip flexor movement. You're doing it in order to get better for a single lift. That's really the central issue of what's going on here, is that you want to do things that will make you better at what you're strong at. That way you can provide more value to people and be more successful on your own. Now look, I work in a business where there's a lot of salespeople, and I've seen salespeople who make great salespeople, but they make awful managers. And I've seen managers who couldn't sell a damn thing in their life. Even if their life depended on it, they couldn't sell it. I've also seen people who are really good at managing specific things like supply chain, but then when you bring them into the medical space, they're awful. They have no idea what's going on. Or even better yet, you have managers who have a team of people to manage, and they have no idea, because there's so many disciplines amongst their team, that they have no idea how to handle any of it. What I'm trying to say here is that if I could go all the way back to being, 15 again, I would tell myself to dabble in more things and figure out what I really didn't like, what I really wasn't good at. And when I found what I was really good at, just hammer that to death. I was a really good engineering student. I don't know how good of an engineer I would have been, but I sacrificed another 8 years after engineering to become somebody that is not engineering. I could have been a pretty good engineer, I think, and I would be a lot further along now as an engineer than what I am now. I think I'm very happy with what I am now. I never know what I could have been, but I know what I am now, which may be better than what it would have been like as an engineer. Now, I have somebody who I've known for my entire life, and he finished law school. The thing is, he hasn't passed the bar yet. It's been 9 years. He's working as a paralegal. He's not a lawyer. And we all tell him, we say, hey, you gotta get your ego out of there. And we don't want to tell him that he's not going to pass the bar, but it's very unlikely after taking it that many times that he's going to pass. The one thing that we're concerned about is whether or not he's even going to be a good lawyer to begin with, right? If he's already that bad at even just taking the test, maybe the test doesn't correlate with how he would practice as a lawyer. But the fact is that the rules are the rules, and he's not playing by the system, and that he's not going to be a lawyer unless he passes that bar exam. Who knows? He could be an awful, awful lawyer. And does it matter that he passed the bar if he's really bad at being a lawyer? We keep telling him, we said, you can provide value to people in a much more effective way. Like, let's say you went to business, or I don't know, you went into sales. You would be able to do something that could be more beneficial to other people and also to yourself. You might be able to develop yourself in a better way if you stop thinking about taking the bar and stop being a paralegal or somebody that doesn't even need a law degree to work the job that you have. He's not focusing on his strengths. And in fact, he keeps hammering his weaknesses to the point where he is actually a weak person. There's nothing that we can do about it. He's about as weak as you can get in terms of the performance and the value that he provides to people. And because of that, I don't really know what to say to this person, because he keeps wanting to take the test, he keeps taking it, and he keeps failing it. I don't know how else you can say it to him other than stop it and try something else. The one thing I've learned is that if you're going to fail at something, like fail soon. Fail soon so that you can move on and that you can do something else. Now, failing is not bad. Failing is not a terrible thing. You're going to fail at something in your life if you haven't yet. And the longer you wait to fail at something, the more catastrophic it's going to be the first time that you actually do fail. So make sure you fail sometime soon. I don't mean that to be a bad thing. Failure is not a bad thing. But it's something that you need to come out and learn from. I failed many times in my life. Who knows? Maybe even this YouTube channel could be a failure. I got no idea. But the one thing is that if you're going to fail, like, fail soon so that you stop wasting time on it and that you can pull something out of it to say, like, I can apply this to something else that I'm going to do. Now, the last thing I want to say is this. You can't be whatever you want to be. And when I say that, people will go ahead and think that being is a state of one thing. In that if you are a doctor, then I only know you as a doctor. I hate that. I actually really dislike the notion of one-dimensional people. I'm a brother. I'm a son. I'm a boyfriend. I'm a fiance. I am an engineer. I'm a YouTuber. I'm a power lifter. I'm so many different things. Don't just say I'm one thing. And I'm not going to say that you're one thing. And don't tell anybody else that they're only one thing. You are, as a person, several different things all at once. You are several different beings all at once. Don't forget that.